What happens when a simple morning show appearance turns into one of the most uncomfortable television moments of the year? Kylie Kelce, wife of retired NFL legend Jason Kelce, found herself at the center of a media firestorm that nobody saw coming. The Today with Jenna and Friends segment was supposed to be light, fun, and promotional. Instead, it became a masterclass in how quickly things can spiral out of control when the wrong questions get asked at the wrong time. Before we dive into exactly what went down, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think about celebrity interviews crossing the line, because what you're about to hear is going to leave you speechless. The studio lights were bright that morning, and the energy in the room felt electric. Jenna Bush Hager sat comfortably in her chair, flanked by her co-hosts Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb. They'd been promoting this interview all week. Kylie Kelce, the woman who had become a household name not just because of her husband's football career, but because of her own authentic presence on social media and her popular podcast, was set to discuss her new book about family, motherhood, and navigating life in the public eye. The cameras were rolling, the audience was settled, and everything seemed perfectly normal. Jenna started with warmth in her voice. "Kylie, it is so wonderful to have you here. We have been so excited about this conversation. Your book has been getting incredible buzz, and I think so many people relate to your honesty about the challenges of raising kids while dealing with public scrutiny." Looking relaxed in a cream-colored blazer and jeans, "Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a journey writing this book, and I really wanted to make sure it was authentic. I didn't want to sugarcoat anything because I think that's what people connect with, you know? The real stuff, not the highlight reel." Savannah leaned forward, nodding enthusiastically. "Absolutely. And I think that's what makes you so relatable. You've never been afraid to show the messy parts. But I have to ask, because I know our viewers are curious, how do you balance being so open while also protecting your family's privacy? Especially now with everything that's been happening in the headlines." There it was. The first subtle shift. Kylie's smile remained, but something flickered in her eyes. "Well, I think there's a difference between being open about universal experiences, like the chaos of bedtime routines, or figuring out how to keep your marriage strong when life gets hectic, versus sharing every single detail of our private lives. I've always tried to draw that line pretty clearly." Hoda jumped in, her tone light but pointed. "Right, but you have shared quite a bit. I mean, your podcast episodes about your relationship with Jason have been pretty revealing. You've talked about arguments, about struggles, about compromise. So where exactly is that line for you?" Kylie shifted slightly in her seat. "I think the line is when it stops being about a shared human experience and starts being about exploiting specific private moments for entertainment. I talk about arguments in general terms because every couple argues. I don't replay word-for-word conversations that should stay between me and my husband." Jenna's expression changed, becoming more serious. "That's interesting you say that, because there's been a lot of talk lately about your family and some tension within it. I know you've seen the reports. People are wondering if there's truth to the rumors about friction between you and Taylor Swift. Can we talk about that?" The room temperature seemed to drop. Kylie's posture straightened, and her smile faded into something more controlled. "Jenna, I thought we were here to talk about my book," Savannah interjected smoothly. We absolutely are. But your book is about family dynamics and navigating relationships. And I think this is relevant because our viewers see you as someone who's real with them. They want to know how you handle these kinds of situations when rumors swirl." Kylie took a breath, clearly measuring her words. "I handle them by not feeding into them. Look, I've been really clear about this in other interviews. My family is my priority. My husband, my kids, our life together, that's what matters. Everything else is noise, and I don't give energy to noise." Hoda pressed on. "But it's not just noise when it affects your family, right? When your brother-in-law is in one of the most high-profile relationships in the world, and people are analyzing every interaction, every photo, every moment, you're all together. That has to impact you somehow." Kylie's jaw tightened slightly. "What impacts me is when people try to create division where there isn't any. What impacts me is when interviews that are supposed to be about my work and my message get derailed into gossip." Jenna leaned back, raising her hands in a placating gesture. "I hear you. I do. But I think you have to understand that people are invested in your family. They love the Kelce brothers. They love the whole dynamic. And when they see things in the media or on social media that suggest maybe things aren't as perfect as they seem, they're curious. That's not gossip. That's genuine interest. Kylie's eyes narrowed. Genuine interest would be respecting when someone says they don't want to discuss something. Genuine interest would be focusing on the actual purpose of this conversation, which was my book about motherhood and the challenges of raising daughters in today's world. Instead, we're sitting here talking about tabloid speculation. The tension was palpable now. Savannah tried to redirect. Your book does touch on dealing with outside pressures and protecting your children from negativity. So in that context, how do you talk to your daughters about what they might see online or hear from their friends about their family? Kylie paused, seeming to consider whether to engage with this angle. I teach them that not everything people say is true, and that not everyone who acts friendly has good intentions. I teach them to trust their own experiences, and to know the difference between someone who genuinely cares about them and someone who's pretending to care because they want something from them. The statement hung in the air, loaded with implication. Jenna's eyebrows raised. That sounds like it comes from personal experience. Have you had situations where people pretended to be friendly but had ulterior motives? Kylie let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. Are we really doing this right now? Hoda jumped in quickly. Kylie, we're just having a conversation. We're trying to give you a platform to share your perspective because there are a lot of narratives out there. Kylie cut her off, her voice firm. Narratives that you all are helping to perpetuate by continuing to bring them up. Do you not see that? You invite me here under the premise of discussing my book, my message, the things I actually care about, talking about, and then you spend the entire interview trying to get me to comment on rumors and speculation. That's not journalism. That's entertainment masked as journalism. The three hosts exchanged glances. Jenna's smile had disappeared entirely. I think that's a little unfair, Kylie. We're asking questions that our audience wants answers to. Kylie shook her head. No, you're asking questions that will generate headlines and clips that will get shared on social media. There's a difference, and I'm not going to participate in that. Savannah's tone became more defensive. We've had countless guests sit in that chair and discuss their personal lives, their relationships, their challenges. That's what morning television is about, connecting with people on a human level. Kylie fired back. Connecting on a human level is not the same as prying into someone's private relationships and family dynamics when they've explicitly said they don't want to discuss it. You all are smart enough to know the difference. The atmosphere had shifted completely from the cheerful opening. Hoda tried once more, her voice softer. I think maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Let's refocus. Your book talks about the importance of setting boundaries. Can you talk about that? Kylie looked at her for a long moment. I can, but I'm not sure you really want to hear it. Setting boundaries means saying no when people push you to do things that don't align with your values. It means walking away from situations that aren't serving you, even when it's uncomfortable. It means not letting people manipulate you into thinking that their agenda should matter more than your own peace of mind. Jenna shifted uncomfortably. I don't think anyone here is trying to manipulate you. Kylie's response was immediate. Then why do I feel like every attempt I've made to steer this conversation back to my book has been ignored? Savannah's face flushed slightly, and she sat up straighter. Kylie, I think you're being a bit defensive here. We're just doing our jobs, and part of that is asking questions that our viewers care about. If you didn't want to talk about your life, why write a book about it? Kylie's expression hardened. There's a massive difference between me choosing what parts of my life to share in my own words, on my own terms, in a book that I spent 2 years writing, versus being ambushed on live television with questions designed to make me either look like I'm hiding something or to get me to trash talk people I care about. You know exactly what you're doing. Jenna's voice took on an edge. Ambushed. That's a strong word. We're having a conversation. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe promoting a book about real life and authenticity isn't the right move. The comment landed like a slap. Kylie's eyes widened slightly, and for a moment she was silent. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, but somehow more powerful. Tough questions would be asking me about the research I did on childhood development, or about the experts I consulted when writing about screen time and social media exposure for kids. Tough questions would be challenging me on my parenting philosophies or asking me to defend positions I take in the book. What you're doing is trying to manufacture drama by dragging my family into tabloid territory, and then questioning my authenticity when I refuse to play along. Hoda tried to interject. I don't think that's fair to say we're manufacturing anything. These are real conversations happening in the public sphere. Kylie turned to her sharply. Conversations you're amplifying. Conversations you're legitimizing by giving them airtime on a major network morning show. You have a responsibility with your platform, and right now, you're using it to corner me into discussing things that have nothing to do with why I'm here. Jenna leaned forward, her voice rising slightly. We have a responsibility to our viewers to ask the questions they want answered. And whether you like it or not, people are talking about your family. They're talking about the dynamics. They're talking about relationships. They're talking about perceived tensions. That's reality, Kylie shot back, and I have a responsibility to my actual family, not the version of my family that exists in people's imaginations or in gossip columns. My reality is that I have 3 daughters at home who will see this interview. My reality is that I have a husband who trusted me to come here and represent our family with dignity. My reality is that I worked incredibly hard on something meaningful, and instead of getting to share that, I'm sitting here defending myself against insinuations and loaded questions. Savannah's tone became more confrontational. Nobody's forcing you to defend yourself. You're choosing to be evasive instead of just being honest. You've built your whole brand on being the relatable, honest one, the one who keeps it real. But now, when we ask you to keep it real about something that's clearly a topic of interest, you shut down. Kylie laughed, but it was sharp and bitter. You don't get to define what being honest means for me. Being honest doesn't mean I owe you or anyone else access to every corner of my private life. Being honest means I'm sitting here telling you directly that I'm uncomfortable with this line of questioning and that it's inappropriate. That's about as honest as it gets. Jenna wasn't backing down. But you've talked about these people before. You've posted about them, you've brought them up in your podcast, you've included them in your social media content. So why is it suddenly off limits now? Kylie's voice rose for the first time, frustration breaking through. Because context matters. Because consent matters. Because there's a difference between me sharing a photo from a family gathering with a sweet caption and you all sitting here trying to get me to confirm or deny gossip about relationship problems that don't exist. Can you really not see how those are completely different things? Hoda put her hand up. Okay, I think we need to take a breath here. This is getting heated, and that's not what we want. Kylie, I understand you're frustrated, but I think you also need to understand our position. We're not trying to hurt you or your family. We're trying to have a real conversation. Kylie's response was immediate and pointed. A real conversation requires mutual respect and boundaries. I came here in good faith. I prepared to talk about my book, about motherhood, about the challenges women face trying to balance everything. I was ready to be vulnerable about postpartum struggles, about the pressure to be perfect, about raising kids who are confident and kind. Instead, you've spent this entire time trying to bait me into creating a soundbite about my personal relationships that you can plaster across social media and turn into a headline. Savannah crossed her arms. I think you're being incredibly unfair to us right now. We've given you multiple opportunities to steer this conversation, and every time you're just attacking us for doing our jobs. Kylie's eyes flashed. I'm not attacking you for doing your jobs. I'm calling out the fact that your job seems to be more about generating controversy than having substantive conversations. And every time I try to redirect to the actual topic, you twist it back to gossip and speculation. That's not me being unfair, that's me stating facts. Jenna's face was now visibly tight with tension. You know what, Kylie? Maybe the problem is that you're not as comfortable with the spotlight as you pretend to be. You want all the benefits of being a public figure, the book deals, the podcast, the sponsorships, the social media following, but you don't want any of the scrutiny that comes with it. The statement hung in the air like a grenade. Kylie stared at Jenna for a long, uncomfortable moment. When she spoke, her voice was dangerously calm. That is incredibly insulting and completely out of line. I have never once complained about scrutiny of things I've actually put out into the world. Review my book, critique my parenting advice, disagree with my opinions, I welcome all of that. But demanding that I discuss private relationships and then suggesting I'm being difficult when I decline is not scrutiny. It's bullying. Hoda's eyes widened. Whoa, Bullying is a very serious accusation. Kylie didn't back down, and it's an accurate one. What else do you call it when three people with a massive platform corner someone on live television and repeatedly push them to discuss topics they've explicitly said they're not comfortable discussing? What do you call it when you question someone's authenticity and integrity because they won't feed you the gossip you want? Jenna's voice was sharp now. We are not bullies, Kylie. We are journalists asking questions. Kylie's response was swift. Journalists seek truth and inform the public. What you're doing is seeking entertainment and ratings. There's a reason your show is called Today with Jenna and Friends, and not 60 Minutes. You're not investigative reporters uncovering corruption. You're morning show hosts, and your job is supposed to be making people feel good while they drink their coffee, not making your guests feel attacked. Savannah jumped back in, her voice tight. You're being really disrespectful right now. We invited you here as a courtesy, to give you a platform for your book, and this is how you treat us. Kylie's laugh was incredulous. A courtesy? You invited me here because you knew my name would bring viewers, and because you thought you could get me to say something controversial that would go viral. Let's not pretend this was some altruistic gesture. And as for disrespect, I've been nothing but polite until you all made it clear that you had no intention of honoring the agreement about what this interview would cover. Jenna leaned forward, her voice challenging. There was no agreement. Your publicist pitched you for the show. We said yes. That's how this works. We don't sign contracts promising to only ask approved questions. Kylie nodded slowly. You're right. And I don't sign contracts promising to sit here and be disrespected. So, we're at an impasse. The three hosts looked at each other, uncertainty flickering across their faces. Hoda tried to sound conciliatory. Kylie, let's just reset. We clearly got off track. Let's talk about your book. Tell us about the main message you want readers to take away. Kylie studied her for a moment, and there was something sad in her expression now, mixed with the anger. The main message is that women need to stop apologizing for having boundaries. That we need to stop letting people make us feel guilty for protecting our peace and our families. That we need to recognize when people are pretending to be on our side while actually trying to exploit us. I guess this interview has become a pretty perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about in the book. Savannah's face reddened. That is so condescending. You're sitting there acting like you're so much better than us, like you're the only one with integrity. Kylie shook her head firmly. I never said that. I said that this specific situation is problematic. I'm not attacking your character as people. I'm addressing your behavior in this interview, and the fact that you're now getting defensive and making this personal kind of proves my point. Jenna's voice was cold now. Maybe we're defensive because you came on our show and basically accused us of being unethical and manipulative. Kylie's response was steady. I described what happened. If that description sounds like an accusation of unethical behavior, maybe that should tell you something about the behavior itself. Hoda tried once more to play mediator, though the strain was evident in her voice. I think we're all feeling very passionate right now, and maybe that's not a bad thing. Passion means we care. Kylie, you clearly care deeply about your message and your family. We care deeply about our show and our audience. Maybe we can find some common ground here. Kylie looked at her, and for a brief moment it seemed like she might soften, but then she spoke, and her words were measured and final. Hoda, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I don't think there is common ground here. You all came into this with an agenda that had nothing to do with my book or my message. I came in good faith. Those two things are incompatible, and no amount of trying to smooth it over changes that fundamental disconnect. Jenna's patience had clearly run out. You keep saying we had an agenda. Our agenda was to have an interesting, engaging conversation with someone who's in the public eye. If that's some kind of crime to you, then I honestly don't know why you agreed to come on television at all. Kylie's voice remained steady, but there was steel in it. An interesting, engaging conversation about what Jenna... Because from where I'm sitting, you had no interest in my book, no interest in my actual message, and every interest in trying to create a moment that would trend on social media. That's not conversation. That's exploitation. Savannah let out an exasperated sigh. Exploitation is such a dramatic word. We asked you questions. That's literally what happens in interviews. If you can't handle that, maybe you're not cut out for this level of public life. The comment seemed to hit something deep. Kylie's expression shifted, and when she spoke, There was a rawness that hadn't been there before. You know what the saddest part of this is? I actually looked forward to this interview. I watched your show. I thought you all were different from some of the other morning shows. I thought there was actual substance here. I prepared thoughtful answers about childhood anxiety, about the pressure social media puts on young girls, about how to maintain a strong marriage when you're both exhausted and overwhelmed. I had statistics, I had personal stories, I had real, meaningful content to share. And you threw all of that away because you wanted to gossip about my family instead. Jenna's voice was defensive now. We didn't throw anything away. You're the one who made this confrontational by refusing to engage with perfectly reasonable questions about your life. Kylie stood up slightly in her chair, her voice rising with emotion. They weren't reasonable, Jenna. They were invasive. And the fact that you can't see the difference is exactly the problem. You're so used to people just rolling over and giving you whatever you want because you have the power of this platform that you've forgotten what actual boundaries look like. Hoda's voice took on a warning tone. Kylie, I really think you need to be careful about what you're saying right now. Kylie turned to her sharply. Is that a threat? Because it sounds like you're suggesting I should be worried about the consequences of standing up for myself on your show. Hoda's eyes widened. No, it's not a threat. I'm trying to help you. You're on national television, and you're burning bridges with one of the biggest morning shows in the country. I'm suggesting you think about that. Kylie's laugh was bitter and exhausted. There it is, the implicit threat, dressed up as concerned. Do what we want, or suffer the consequences. That's what this has been about from the start, hasn't it? You thought you could use my desire to promote my book as leverage to get me to talk about things I didn't want to discuss. And now that I'm not playing along, you're reminding me of your power. Savannah's voice was cold. Nobody's threatening you, but actions have consequences. You came on our show and basically called us unethical bullies on live television. Did you think we were just going to smile and nod? Kylie's response was immediate. I think if you were actually confident in your behavior, my criticism wouldn't bother you this much. The fact that you're all so defensive suggests that on some level, you know exactly what you were doing. Jenna slammed her hand lightly on the armrest of her chair, her composure finally cracking completely. You don't get to come on our show and psychoanalyze us, Kylie. You don't get to sit there and act morally superior while you refuse to answer simple questions. You want to talk about boundaries? Fine, here's a boundary. If you're going to be a public figure, if you're going to write books and do podcasts and build a brand off your family name, then you need to accept that people are going to ask you about your life. All of it, not just the sanitized, approved parts. Kylie stood up slowly, and the movement silenced everyone. She reached for the small microphone clipped to her blazer and carefully unclipped it, her movements deliberate and calm despite the chaos of the moment. You're absolutely right, Jenna. You do get to ask whatever questions you want. That's your right. And it's my right to decide that I don't want to participate in this anymore. Hoda's voice rose in alarm. Kylie, wait, let's just take a breath. We can salvage this. Kylie shook her head, holding the microphone in her hand. No, we can't. And honestly, I don't want to. This has been one of the most disappointing experiences of my professional life. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise just to make everyone comfortable. You wanted authenticity. This is it. I'm authentically done with this conversation. Savannah's voice was sharp and urgent. If you walk off this set right now, you understand what that's going to look like, right? You understand the story that's going to be told. Kylie met her eyes directly. I understand that no matter what I do, you're going to spin this however serves your narrative best. I could sit here for another hour answering every invasive question you throw at me, and you'd still edit it down to whatever soundbite fits the story you want to tell. So yes, I understand what walking off will look like. And I'm choosing it anyway because at least this way, I maintain my self-respect. Jenna stood up as well, her voice pleading now but with an edge of anger underneath. Kylie, be reasonable. Sit back down. We can change direction. We can talk about whatever you want. Kylie's smile was sad. That's the thing, Jenna. I've been trying to talk about what I wanted to talk about this entire time. You just weren't listening. Or you were listening, you just didn't care. Either way, we're past the point where I believe anything is going to change if I sit back down. Hoda tried one more time, her voice softer. Think about your book. Think about all the people who won't get to hear your message if you leave now. Kylie paused, and for a moment there was genuine conflict in her expression. Then she spoke quietly. "My book will speak for itself. And honestly, I think walking away from a situation that doesn't serve me is exactly the message I want to send. I spent a whole chapter writing about teaching my daughters to remove themselves from environments where they're not being treated with respect. It would be pretty hypocritical if I didn't model that myself." Savannah's voice was cold and clipped. "So that's it? You're just going to walk out in the middle of a live broadcast?" Kylie looked around at the three women, at the cameras, at the crew members who had frozen in place, watching the scene unfold. "I'm going to walk out of an interview that stopped being productive the moment it started. There's a difference." She set the microphone down on her chair carefully, smoothing down her blazer. The silence in the studio was deafening. Jenna made one last attempt, her voice tight. "You're making a huge mistake. People are going to see this as you having something to hide." Kylie turned back to face her, and there was something almost peaceful in her expression now, as if a weight had been lifted. "Let them think whatever they want. The people who actually know me, the people who actually matter in my life, they'll understand. And the people who don't know me but want to judge me based on a gossip-driven narrative, I stopped caring about their opinions a long time ago. I just forgot that for a minute. Thanks for reminding me." With that, she turned and walked toward the exit of the set. Her steps were steady and unhurried. Behind her, the three hosts stood in stunned silence. Hoda called out, "Kylie, please?" But her voice lacked conviction, as if she already knew it was over. Kylie didn't turn around. She didn't speed up or slow down. She simply walked off the set with her head high and her dignity intact, leaving behind three morning show hosts who were scrambling to figure out how to fill the remaining segment time and explain to their producers what had just happened. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the awkward silence that followed. Jenna finally sank back into her chair, running her hand through her hair. Well, that was unexpected. Savannah let out a breath, shaking her head. "I can't believe she actually left." Hoda looked at the camera, her media training kicking in even in crisis mode. "We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have some exciting cooking segments. Stay with us." So what do you think? Did the hosts cross a line, or was Kylie being too sensitive? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss stories like this. The world of celebrity interviews is more complicated than it seems. And sometimes the most revealing moments are the ones that happen when everything falls apart.